Hey, so recently I was invited to weigh in on a pretty interesting LinkedIn post. It was regarding AI, of course, and the poster asked, is plagiarizing AI plagiarism? So, in other words, if you use AI but don't give credit to AI, is that plagiarism? And the poster used an AI generated response as the jumping off point for this discussion. That AI generated response reads as follows: using artificial intelligence to write essays and articles is considered plagiarism. Plagiarism is defined as representing someone else's work as your own without giving proper credit. So, in the opinion of the poster, the answer is yes. In my opinion, the answer is no. And I will give you my reasoning behind that at the end of this episode. But as you know, I'm all about copyright infringement, copyright protection, and preventing copyright infringement, and less so about plagiarism. But I do have some thoughts about that. I did think this was a great time to have a conversation about the differences between copyright infringement and plagiarism because people often confuse the two. And in fact, I think that was why I was invited into a conversation about plagiarism, which is not something I typically address. So while copyright infringement and plagiarism do have some overlap, they present separate legal and ethical considerations and implications. So let's first talk about copyright infringement. US copyright law grants the creator, the human creator of an original work, exclusive rights to use and distribute its creation. So the rights that you have exclusive right to under copyright law, the right to reproduce, the right to distribute the work, to perform it, to publicly display it, to create derivative works from it, and you have exclusive right to grant others the right to do any of those things with it. So if somebody wants to do those things, they can only get that permission from you as a copyright owner. Copyright infringement occurs whenever someone does one of those exclusive things that are exclusive rights to you without your permission. We have copyright infringement. And it is a legal violation, and it can result in civil as well as criminal penalties. Some examples of copyright infringement: reproducing some or all of a book without permission of the author, posting a copy of a movie to YouTube, which happens without authorization. YouTube's been around. I didn't know what the big deal was, and I've recently discovered what the big deal is, and now I'm a huge fan. And I will say that what has gotten my attention are these YouTube, are they called commentators, I guess, where they take clips from, it's always reality television, what comes to my attention. Reality television, they do this commentary over what was being said. And there was one in particular, it was like a pop psychologist. And so he was taking these clips from this reality television shows and then kind of putting his pop psych spin on it. And apparently he got in some trouble about it because I think his channel was demonetized. And so now he has to like do these really funky things with the images so that he's not committing copyright infringement when he like kind of does like half the screen or something, or in order to not infringe copyrights. But yeah, you can't use even clips from TV shows without permission, in danger of copyright infringement. The other example is using a photograph on your website without permission. You do need to have a license for that. Even if you found it online, it requires the consent of the copyright owner to use that photograph. And music, integrating music into a presentation, into a video on the introduction of the podcast. I have a license for the music for the intro and outro music because that is someone's copyrighted work and I need consent to use it. On the other hand, plagiarism is the act of using someone else's work or ideas without proper attribution and presenting those ideas as your own. Plagiarism is considered an ethical violation, unlike copyright infringement, which is a legal violation. However, it is not without consequences. Probably all of us first became aware of plagiarism in school when we were told that we have to give proper attribution to our sources. Remember those? I mean, it's been a long time for me, but when we did those reports, we had to make sure we gave credit to where we got materials. And if we took something out of an encyclopedia and giving credit to where it came from. So even if I wasn't going to get in trouble if I stole something out of the encyclopedia without giving credit to it, but that would be plagiarism and that would have academic consequences, right? And so it also now in our professional lives, it can have professional as well as reputational consequences if we are stealing other people's ideas and passing them off as our own. And so it, of course, as we're developing our reputations, developing our brands, our voices, our thought leadership, we do not want to be in the plagiarism business, even if we do not end up with statutory damages as a result. You can absolutely have major reputational and professional consequences to committing plagiarism. Some examples of plagiarism: copying and pasting text from a source without proper citation, the one that we know of from school, paraphrasing somebody else's ideas without giving credit. That's probably going to be more applicable to what we're doing these days as we're developing our thought leadership, submitting someone else's work as our own. That might even fall into the crossover there. And then failing to acknowledge collaborators or co-authors. I do want to drill into this one because, I have done a number of presentations about what the copyright issues are surrounding collaborations and co-authorship. So why does failing to acknowledge a co-author fall under plagiarism, but not under copyright infringement? Well, recall that a co-author, each co-author, I'm just going to use, let's say there's two co-authors, each co-author owns 100% of the copyright in that co-authored work. And it's not just, 100% plus 100% equals 200%. It's just each co-author has 100% of the rights in that work. So it can do all of those things that I mentioned above: perform, display, create derivatives, give other people's rights to do it. They can do each of them separately without the consent of the other. That's why it's 100%, because they don't need to get consent from the other person. What I could do is I have a co-author of a work. I can publish it because I have not exclusive rights. I have 100% rights to do it without permission from my co-author and not give credit to my co-author. So is that a copyright infringement? No, because I have the rights to do that. But is that plagiarism? Absolutely yes, because I am not giving my co-author credit for her contribution to that co-authored work. So the main differences, just in a nutshell: copyright infringement is a violation of legal rights granted by copyright law, whereas plagiarism is a breach of the ethical standards that we would expect in academic, professional, and our reputational spheres related to honesty and integrity. Even if no law is broken, there's different kind of bodies that deal with this. If it is a copyright infringement, of course, we have access to the court system and other legal remedies, assuming it's registered. And courts, for if it's registered, there are other legal remedies, even if it isn't registered. Whereas our plagiarism, that's going to be handled, one, by the court of public opinion, if people find out that you steal people's ideas. And also there can be real significant consequences in the academic setting, certainly, maybe suspension, expulsion, failing a class. In the professional realm, people distrust you. They wonder, they don't want to work with you. Maybe you lose a job because you represented yourself as being the author of something that you weren't, or that you bringing some ideas to an engagement that aren't your own, and just general reputational harm that can come from that. And then the protections that are available to us are different. We register our copyrights in order to make sure that we are protecting our expressions. Copyright does not protect ideas, but it protects the expression of the idea, what we wrote, what we recorded, what we painted. But plagiarism does protect our ideas as well. So where is the intersection? So the intersection comes when we steal someone's expression. So we literally take some of those rights, someone writes something and we lift it up and we put our name on it and we distribute it as our own, that is both a copyright infringement and plagiarism. And by the way, you can have copyright infringement without plagiarism. Just to be clear, like if you take somebody else's work, you give them full credit for it, and people do get confused by that. Like, I'm giving them credit, but they still must give you permission to distribute it. So the fact that you gave me credit does not negate the copyright infringement if I have not given you permission to distribute it, regardless of the credit that you may give to me. So that would be plagiarism. Copyright infringement without plagiarism, when I give credit, but I don't have permission. And then I can also have plagiarism without a copyright infringement when I take someone's ideas because ideas are not eligible for copyright protection. Or even if we were to take something in the public domain, because there are some things that might be in the public domain, like something that's very old. Like I could take an unpublished work of Shakespeare, I don't know what, and say like, look what I did. It's not protected by copyright law anymore, but that would obviously be plagiarism if I slap my name on there. The tried and true best practices to make sure we neither infringe nor plagiarize. Always get permission to use content that you do not own. If you're taking the content, assume it is copyrighted. If it's in tangible form, you're finding it in writing, you're finding it on the internet, it's in tangible form. And unless you know that it is in the public domain because you know it is AI generated, or you know that it is one of the categories of public domain, I talk about that a lot too, then you want to make sure you get permission to use it. Use proper attribution. If you're talking about purple cows, I'm going to assume that was originally Seth Godin's. I don't know, I could be wrong about that. Make sure you're giving attribution to where you're getting the ideas about blue oceans or things like that. Cite your sources. I'm sure everyone here has had plenty of experience writing research papers using third-party sources, and make sure you're citing your sources. And sometimes it happens accidentally. Certainly, if we are using AI materials, we want to make sure that they haven't kicked out something that might show up on a plagiarism checker as being plagiarism. And I'm going to talk about why I don't think it's plagiarism still. It will damage your reputation if you are using ideas that aren't your own. So let's get to my hot take about why I think AI isn't plagiarism, despite what I just said. Because there is kind of the loose notion of not taking other people's ideas as your own. And I don't endorse it. I think it's a bad idea. I don't want you to do it. But I think as an ethical issue, that plagiarism has two purposes. The first purpose is to make sure that the originator of the idea gets proper credit for it. It is the product of their own intellect, their own expertise, their own deep thinking, their own thought leadership. That is side one of the two-sided coins of plagiarism, is making sure that the originator of the idea is properly credited for the product of their intellect. The other side is to make sure that the plagiarist, I think that's a word, the person who commits plagiarism doesn't get credit for that idea. It should not be part of their body of work. It should not be included in a thought leadership because that's not their idea. And by the way, I'm not talking about copyright infringement here at all. I am talking about ideas. And so that they're not getting credit for someone else's ideas. It's not the product of their deep thinking, product of their expertise. They've taken it from somebody else. And so those are the two sides to me of the ethical considerations where we're thinking about really condemning someone in the professional setting for plagiarism. For the first side, the originator getting credit for their ideas, for the use of their intellect, that simply doesn't apply to AI. When AI is the creator of the content, then there's no ethical obligation to make sure that AI gets credit for its ideas. Does it even have any ideas, right? Or is it just an algorithm of some sort, whatever the magic is that happens inside of AI? So does it get the respect that we want to reserve for the true creators of ideas? Does AI get that kind of respect that plagiarism is intended to prevent? And my answer to that is no, that it is not intended to do that. On the other side of the plagiarism coin, is to make sure that the person who plagiarizes doesn't get to include those ideas in their own body of work as their own thought leadership. And personally, what is coming out of AI generated content, nothing that's I've seen this come out of AI is even close to being worthy of being some big idea that is worthy of being in someone's body of work. I mean, most of what's coming out of AI, that's, maybe they're writing a blog post or doing an outline or making some social media posts. I'm not saying that it can't be more sophisticated the more that you work with it, but generally what is being generated by AI is a regurgitation of a mishmash of ideas that are already out there that they're just kind of coming together to try to spit something out. It's been my experience. And that is literally its function, is to take the ideas that are already out there and create something serviceable. That's assuming it's not hallucinating. I mean, I guess we could call hallucinations original, but typically that means it's just flawed or inaccurate. So in my opinion, neither purpose of why the ethical consequences of plagiarism are so real and severe, neither of those purposes are met when we're talking about AI generated content. We're not trying to protect the originator of the ideas, which is AI. That's not, to me, why we have ethical condemnation of plagiarism. And there's also, if you are using AI as part of your thought leadership, that's some pretty poor thought leadership. We're also not benefiting from stealing somebody else's big ideas when the big ideas came from AI. So them's me thoughts. Let me know what you think and join me again. Remember, IP is fuel. Thanks, guys.